Jermaine Roebuck's Associate Director for Threat Hunting at CISA. Jermaine, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. End of year, beginning of year, coming up shortly for the federal government. Organizations are always looking for low-cost ways to effectively secure their systems. What are some of the things that you're seeing that are effective in that area?
So I'll tell you a couple of things, especially when we're in terms of critical infrastructure. What we're seeing is that organizations are doing the basics of cybersecurity, basic cyber hygiene practices. So going from very low cost to minimal effort to high, I would say, especially in the water community, changing those default passwords to more complex and secure passwords is number one. I think when it comes to operational technology environments, you're going to want to make sure those OT devices aren't present on the internet. But at the same time, you got to think about the technicians and the engineers that sometimes have to drive 2 or 3 hours away to get to these devices. So obviously they want to add internet connectivity so they can access them remotely. So one of the ways that you can do that securely is to set up what we call virtual private networks in front of those devices, make sure they're locked down and secure, enable logging, as well as make sure you implement phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication. That costs almost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, I would say that isolation is a key component. Now, this part typically costs organizations a bit more money in terms of establishing what we call a demilitarized zone between the information technology and the operational technology network. And when you do that, that enables you to put additional security controls in between those two environments to keep attackers out. Mm-hmm. So those are a few of the really low-cost ways to do that.
What has been the biggest barrier for organizations to take those steps? They don't sound very difficult. They sound pretty straightforward, and low cost means resources aren't really an excuse. What has been the holdup in your view?
So what we've observed is a lot of times when you think about the operational technology environment, that involves technicians and engineers who have a lot of expertise in OT, ICS SCADA systems. What they don't often have is that cybersecurity expertise, and a lot of times they aren't taking cybersecurity into consideration. So a lot of what they do is, how do I make it quick and easy so that I can access these systems remotely? Mm-hmm. I think the more we can do to educate those owner operators, those engineers, and those technicians of the danger, I think that'll be a sort of a turning point that'll allow us to bolster cybersecurity defenses. But we have a long way to go.
One of the things that CISA has done, not your office specifically, but CISA has done more broadly, is provide these resources, this knowledge set to organizations across the federal government and across the private sector, and enhance that interaction. What have you seen be the most successful ways that government organizations can interact with private sector organizations, especially to spread the word about cyber hygiene and other good cyber practices?
So I think it's key for not only across the federal government. So at CISA, we do a lot of partnership with the Environmental Protection Agency to deal with the water problem. We partner with the Department of Energy to deal with the energy side. But a lot of the ways we reach that community is through direct relationships. So within CISA, we have different regional offices, and a lot of times they pay these utilities a visit to get the word out. We also post a ton of resources on our CISA.gov website. Specifically, I want to point people to the cyber performance goals. Those are really baseline, achievable goals that can accomplish a lot of those really inexpensive, low-hanging fruit sort of controls that organizations can put in place. On the CISA.gov website, we also have a number of different resources where we partner with the intelligence community, a lot of those agencies that I just mentioned, that provide a ton of resources and information on how to implement basic security hygiene.
You told me before we turned the cameras on that even basic hackers doing really elementary type things are getting into systems. What's driving that? Is that their level of skill increasing? Is it the private sector organizations that they're having success penetrating, not doing what they should be doing, some combination of those things, some other factors?
So it's a combination of a few things, and I'll key on what we've been seeing lately. And for a moment, I'm going to use the water sector as an example. So when you think about the water utilities, there's 50,000 utilities across the United States that provide safe drinking water. A lot of these utilities service less than 10,000 customers. And again, when I mentioned those technicians and those engineers having to drive 2 or 3 hours away to perform maintenance and engineering tasks, they're looking for easy ways to do that remotely so they don't, time and money is a factor here. So a lot of what they do is they put in sort of systems that enable them to access those devices to the internet, but they fail to secure them. What they don't realize is that hacktivists and ransomware operators and all sorts of folks are scanning the internet, and there's tools freely available that enable that. And they are gaining access to these devices because they are not properly secured. Either they have default passwords or very insecure passwords, and they're just taking advantage of it. A lot of the times what the hacktivists are doing, they'll start off with low-level sort of DDoS attacks or website defacements, but they realized they weren't getting the notoriety, the same notoriety that they would get if they actually overflowed a water pumping station or caused some impact, which would cause a lot of stir. So we're starting to see that sort of pivot, but implementing some of those basic security controls eliminates a wide swath of that type of activity.
You mentioned a couple of the threat groups there, hacktivists and ransomware attackers. Are those the primary sources of threats now, and how is that landscape changing over time in your view?
I think we are seeing more and more ransomware attacks within utilities. We're seeing more activism as of late, but they're not the only groups that are causing these types of disruptions. When you think about the nation state activity that we talked about in terms of Volt Typhoon, it's very different. The level of sophistication is different and the motivation is different. You won't see them overflowing a pump or blowing up a power station. They literally get into these environments, leveraging vulnerabilities, and then they lie in wait in preparation for, at some future date, holding that infrastructure at risk. But right now, a lot of what you're seeing in the news, and especially when it comes to ransomware operators, they're not actually impacting the OT systems directly. A lot of times they're performing ransomware operations on the information technology side, causing impacts to the OT because then you have to shut it down. The hacktivists are a little bit of a different story. They are actually getting into OT systems and causing minor disruptions, but just enough to make everybody anxious about it.
Jermaine, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.